Okay. All right. Welcome everybody to the Moab City Council regular meeting on April 22nd. I'll call this meeting to order at 6:00 p.m. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Jessa will lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right. Next up, we have public comments. Limited to 3 minutes per person. If you have a comment, if you could fill out a form. Would anybody like to speak? Jess? If you fill it out already?
Somebody like it, or?
Yeah, you can hand it to Michael.
So hi, I think most of you know me. My name's Jessica O'Leary. I live across the ball fields at 232 East, 100 South. And I brought some visual aids for my statement today. I'm here to talk about the size of the field and the games that are allowed to be played on that field. So as you can see, these softballs are from one night of co-ed league softball play. And these were not from my neighbor's yard. These are not from the street. These are all from my yard. I have done a little bit of research into the regulation size of a softball field. And what we have here in the city is a kid youth field. So for youth sports, 6 to 8-year-olds, 150 to 200 feet is the size of this field. For 9 to 12, it goes up to 200 to 225, 13 to 18, 225 to 250. Adult men's leagues, the requirement is 250 feet. Well, I can tell you exactly what's at 250 feet from the batting box. It is my window. And so I had a broken window. I had one of these. I don't know exactly which one. It's one of them here. Go through my window last year, the very last night of league play. And I have a police report and the police report number there of when that occurred. I tried contacting the rec department to talk to them about it. Never heard anything back. You know, luckily it was only one pane of glass, so it was only $200 to replace that window. But I want to make it clear, I absolutely love youth sports. I fully support the soccer, the youth softball. I think it's great. I love hearing the kids playing out there. What I don't like, and it's super stressful to be in my kitchen trying to make dinner and there's softballs hitting the side of my house and the windows all evening long. And so I do not think that adult league play should be scheduled on those fields unless we get a net installed to keep the balls inside. And I know the adults really like playing on that field because they feel like superstars because they're hitting home runs all night long. But it is a youth field. So, and I'll leave these with you. You can return them to the youth sports department at the low, low price of only $20 a ball. No, just kidding.
Thanks, Jess.
Thanks, Jeff. All right, we'll take the balls. Thank you. We are looking at the ball fields I know that's on our CIP list or our RAP tax list.
It's definitely on the lookout for the route tax, the redesign those. It's definitely big.
Yep.
But it might not be for a few years, so the council will have to talk about
Right.
options.
Good timing, Jess. Thank you. Anybody else would like to speak? Oh, all right. We'll close the public comment period and move right on to our strategic planning workshop. This is a workshop. We're going to try to keep it to an hour. If we get done sooner, great. We'll just move into our regular meeting. But Alexi is going to start this presentation, but really it's a dialogue between all of you guys. So, go Alexi.
All right. Okay, a lot of this will be just discussion, so we'll go through questions, thoughts, concerns, changes, all of those things. I'll just start with kind of a recap of what we've done so far, and then we'll jump into all the goals for this year. So we started these discussions in January. This has since been something that Danny and Michael and Lisa and I have been working on, trying to revise it, make it clearer what the intention was from the beginning, make the goals more actionable, and reframing those pillars that we initially had from the vision to be something that's a little more goal-oriented and strategic plan appropriate. So to date, we've used those pillars, we've elaborated on the goals and objectives, we've proposed a status for each of those goals, and we've begun identifying even the goals' origins, like which plans they came out of, or if they were from a city council resolution, trying to track where different goals have come from and where they ended up in our plan. Okay, this is a little bit of a visual recap. So up here on top, we have the original pillars, which came from that vision. And then below that are the ones that were revised this year. So two were combined, added the resilience one. This is pillars, revised pillars, and then some of the things that were actually in that original vision as their ideas for, or the ideas that came out of that as part of a strategic plan. And then at this level, also coming in with other goals from the general plan, other plans or studies that have informed things that we've been working on. Going from there to an actual short-term strategic plan, from like those more long-term expansive goals to what would be in a specific year. We have the 5 that Michael identified in our previous meeting. And then the idea is that we've got this funnel of things that we are going to work on eventually. Things aren't disappearing. It's just that we have specific priorities for this year that are going to be in the strategic plan for this year. We already went over the 5 in our last workshop. So now we get to go to the 53. Some of these have been moved around a little bit. Again, we're not losing things. We're working on classifying them, and I'm interested in your feedback on that tonight. So we have 2 identified as finished. A few of the things that we had identified as finished have moved into like ongoing goals, and then 21 modified, 20 ongoing, 10 removed. And we can also discuss the removed ones. A lot of them were either redundant or we had legal reasons why the city can no longer pursue those. Okay, this is just an example of the kind of thing that we're going to look at, and then I'll go ahead and pull open the spreadsheet because it has everything in there with the comments. So we started with an original goal, for example, an energy audit of city facilities, and then there's a revised goal. In this case, it's moved into specifically a goal that the city council passed. And then some of them have the addition of an objective if there were multiple things that were pursuing that goal. And then, so in the case of the energy audit, it goes under this greenhouse gas reduction goal. A specific way to accommodate or to accomplish the greenhouse gas goal is to become more energy efficient. In other cases where the goal directly translates, it's a goal and a revised goal. There isn't a subset of objectives. All right. Now we get to go to the spreadsheet. Okay. I'm going to share again. Okay. Try to get this to fit up here a little bit more. And then if anybody had specific thoughts or concerns, the colors are a little hard to see here. There's numbers 2 and 3 are finished, and you can see that in the status column. And then below that, we start getting into modified. The original goal is what was in our strategic plan in ClearGov. The revised goal is something that we're pursuing or suggesting that we revise. And then we've got the objectives, if there were any proposed. And we won't go through all the origins tonight, but just for reference, you may have seen this in the agenda summary, but in here we do have places where these can be originally found. This is sort of a working draft because it's a lot of work to try to figure out which plans things came out of. So I wouldn't say it's definitive, like it could be in other locations as well, but these are at least some of the places you can find those goals. And then notes about why it was put in the status that it is right now is in that last column. Okay, are there any thoughts, questions, concerns?
Alexia, I was wondering about the, so in the we removed the invest in trails and active transportation connectivity and it references that it's redundant because it's already in the Parks and Rec master plan. But you know, and I'm seeing other things that are coming out of plans and because this strategic plan is our, you know, our short-term action plan that's supposed to be guiding these things. You know, I don't want to see something that's so important to me removed from something that's going to be in our face, and especially now that we have somebody in a position to be tracking this stuff. I would love to see it state, and so it does state that you know, specific projects could be prioritized as goals, and so I went back to the general plan, and there are several you know, actionable items that I think that we could add in there. You know, if we wanted to define an action more, and so a couple that I pulled out were: 1, provide well-maintained sidewalks of sufficient width, expand sidewalk systems in an orderly way. I think that fits really well into active transportation. And again, having it in the strategic plan like this, it just keeps it on the forefront of all of our minds. And then 2, expand wayfinding to trail access points, I think is a really important one to keep in the forefront. And then also painting crosswalks and curbs frequently enough that the paint is visible, and that's all just the little plan. And so that one I would change to just come up with a sort of a regular painting plan, you know, how we're going to address this on a yearly basis to make sure that all of our striping crosswalks are all visible. Okay, so you'd like to see that one added in with the specific things that we might do this year? Yeah, and why was it? I didn't understand the reasoning for it being removed. I think the removal was because it's so broad that it would be hard for us to know when we've accomplished it. Great. Like when is connectivity? Yes. So I think things like the sidewalk project this year are something that we can put in there and we can say we either did it or we didn't, or we have some sort of progress towards it. So it's not that connectivity is no longer a goal. It was more like this particular goal wasn't something that we could probably ever accomplish, just because there could always be more connectivity. Agreed. Okay, so hopefully those actionable items will help define that a little bit more.
Well, we'd like to hear from everybody on these items, because once we're finished with this, we're going to come back with the recommendation for all of the strategic plan items. And I guess what we're getting at today is how granular do we want to be? The whole explanation of it being in a separate plan already is could fall in. There's a bunch of those that could fall into that category. And you know, when we adopt these master plans, sometimes I guess maybe they might get lost a little bit or put on a shelf and things like that. But we're trying to make an effort to really resurrect all of those and assign somebody on staff to be a champion for each one of those, so that we are moving forward on these things. And I guess what I'm hearing is that maybe there isn't as much confidence in the plans themselves. If it's not on the strategic plan, maybe there's not confidence that it's actually going to get done.
I guess what I'm saying is that, you know, in our earlier discussion a couple of meetings ago about the strategic plan, we definitely, I think we're all in agreement that we wanted to make sure that the strategic plan was still represented the original community vision for the direction of Moab City, right? And I think that those plans, those general plans, the Parks Master Plan, the Unified Transportation Master Plan, because they have so much like a public input component to them, you know, I think that's a great way to sort of bring in, you know, that public input and steer it into the strategic plan. And so I would like to, and yes, Michael, I do feel like, you know, oftentimes, you know, some of these plans get kind of put on a shelf and forgotten about, and having it in the strategic is a way to just keep it right on the forefront of.
Right. Is there any way we could acknowledge the master plan in the goal, like implement the goals of the master plan, including, and then maybe have some objectives that list some of the high points, and it doesn't exclude anything, but it recognizes that there's more to this.
I like that a lot. Yeah.
So, okay.
I think that's something you guys said, is that you wanted those plans to be connected to the strategic plan.
Yeah. Yeah, I think pulling out the action items from all of those plans, like I think that you know, I'm seeing a lot of connectivity with like the sustainability plan. Like I know and I can see like, oh, you know, the urban forestry, like that is a priority in the sustainability plan. And so I can like kind of cross-reference those two kind of similar housing plans. Some of those are repeated in both. So yeah, I'm supportive. I think that's a good idea. Yeah, I guess it is, you know, repetitive in some ways, but in other ways is like actually pulling those out of those other plans so that they can kind of sit on a shelf, but you know, we know that we're working on them in the context of our strategic plan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of the things we were discussing, like behind the scenes, was just like, when should something that is in another plan also be in the strategic plan? Like, when is it also, you know, only part of that plan, or when is it like brought into the strategic plan? So that it makes sense, like that we would be discussing how to navigate those two things.
I think you said it. It's the strategic plan is your message to the community of what your main strategy is as a city council for this year. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
I think an ideal hope would be that that's like partially driven by staff kind of consulting plans and saying like, okay, in the Parks and Trails, like, you know, Pat is working with staff and saying like, within this plan, here's what we want to do. And then staff is kind of proposing that up to us for strategic planning.
Right. Right. Like of all the things that we could be working on in this whole pipeline of ideas that we've generated, these are the things that are happening this year or in the next 3 years.
Well, and I think that as city council members, we're told very often to look at things from the 30,000 foot level, which is obviously what we did when we created those goals. But, and I completely appreciate that some of them are so broad and they are so high, you know, we're looking at them at such a high level. It's hard to address what is going to happen day to day, you know. I don't think I don't think removed is the right word for, invest in trails and active transportation connectivity. I think we defined what we can do this year and in the next few years. And a council that comes after us will still have that high level goal, but their action items will definitely be different, hopefully. They're not going to be still working on the same part of the trail that we're considering this year. So I completely appreciate what staff has done in trying to focus us on what we meant. So I think it's just chipping away a little bit at a time.
Yeah. Do we think, I mean, were my suggestions, is that getting too specific, too granular and sort of pigeonholing staff?
No, I think if you were amenable to having a higher goal, like implement the parks master plan, including these things, then I don't think it's too granular. I think it's just saying, hey, this plan is really important. We're going to mention it here because we think it's important, but we also want to give a plug for it. So go look at it. So it's doing two things. It's saying we want to do these projects, but we also have a lot more in this plan. Go look at it. So.
Yeah. I think well, in general, I so appreciate the structure of this and also just kind of the way that you guys are structuring, like, staff reports and that kind of thing. It's really helpful to see it in this format. So kudos in general to that. Yeah. And I think to have that understanding of like, what is council priority? What is staff priority? What is in a plan? Like, even if it's all of those things, to have that kind of understanding is helpful as well. So I appreciate that. I guess other than parks, there's 52, I guess. I think
And that's what I feel like as I sit and look at this and I go like, like foster, the first one on the green, foster a district and resilient economy, and then to me, I look at this and I'm like, oh, you guys want us to evaluate existing commercial zones to support local businesses. We could spend 2 hours just talking about what that is, and so to me, this is just so 60,000 foot level, that do we need to take this line item by line item and go, what do we want to see on this? Is that kind of, because us going like, hey, we want to come up with a downtown plan. And now we're telling you guys like, you come up with a downtown plan and you present it to us, and what we may be thinking is a downtown plan, looks like a Volkswagen Bug, and you bring us a Geo Metro. And we're like, no, this isn't it, but it's, so I think that we almost need to be having this discussion together to, to figure out like, where we're at, with things and make sure we're all kind of designing the same thing. I look at like the sidewalk discussions, for example, like, like you guys came up with a great plan to do it, stuff, but I think, but then we were kind of like, well, it kind of evolved and changed things,
Yeah.
And I almost think that is with each one of these things is that, you guys came up with a plan, presented it, and, I don't know, I feel kind of hypocritical a little bit because I'm like, we want you to do this. You come back and we're going to tell you that it's wrong, or that it's not what our vision was. But if we were all working together with the same vision, then we're all working together to create what we're looking for.
Well, and I think my understanding of this is the goals and the objectives are what we need to be focusing on.
Right.
And the details of those objectives is what staff needs to figure out. And that's kind of, I don't know that we want to get into that kind of detail because then we're kind of going beyond what our role is.
But in the notes, it says, make it more specific, so it's like.
And I think that's staff.
That's us.
Yeah. But is that you guys make it more specific, like you guys having notes for the council to be more specific in what we want?
No, I think, well, we might want some feedback, but when we originally went through these, we were like, most of the people who put this together, at least on staff, are no longer here. And some of the goals and objectives were a little vague and were hard to to determine unless you had a secret decoder ring or something, or you were around. And luckily Lisa was around and she kind of knows what was behind each one of these. So what we tried to do is go and just interpret what it was we thought the goal was with Lisa's help. And I'm talking about Lisa Church. And then try to reconstruct it in a way that we felt was constructive, something that we could look at as a goal or objective, something that we know when it's accomplished, that we can measure it as we're going, that's timely and things like that. So what we tried to do was not recreate anything, but kind of reorganize it or rewrite it in a way that we felt it was intended to be to begin with, but make it just a little bit more detail. So one of the things so we can do a workshop like this. It sounds like it's we're not getting into the groove. It might be because maybe this is meant for a smaller group, like a work group or something like that.
Well, I think it needs to be more condensed for us. Like, you guys say like, hey, we're going to bite off the first 5 things, and, but to me, this is just, it's too big of a document to process,
So maybe do 5 at a time, like have a meeting, do 5, get through those 5, seal them up, and then
Well, I
bring back.
think we don't necessarily need to revisit all 53.
Right.
So we were trying at the beginning to make these a little clearer, like Walnut Lane. What do we want to do with Walnut Lane? That's just a name of a street. So when the staff tried to make it clearer, we were trying to go through and be a little more specific about what the goal was related to that specific thing. I think the part that we need to be clear on are those top 5 goals that are the council's priorities for this year. So those are the ones that Michael brought last time. I think this time around, what we were hoping to get, and we could bring it into small groups and get more granular, but I think at this point, we were hoping to get an idea of whether we still encapsulated the purpose and the intent of the original goals. And some of that, I'm going to continue to meet with staff and make sure the goals still represent the original intention. And then moving on from there, whether they're classified correctly. Like, is this something that we are combining and modifying, something that's finished, something that we're removing from the plan, or maybe reimagining, like this was too broad, but we want to bring in, the specifics of that, like what we were talking about with the connectivity. So I think we don't necessarily need to get into all of the 53. If in the next strategic plan, some other subset of 5 or 6 or 10 or whatever moves up the line, I think those will need to be very specific for that year, but we don't necessarily we need to know what the intention was, but we don't have to get into specifics or tasks or anything like that yet for the whole 53.
But so like take the first goal, like implement suggested improvements to downtown Main Street corridor. I think it would be good to like to me, that's a big priority on my list, yeah. And so if we were going to talk about like kind of where we were going with that, I think it'd be important to talk about like where we are, what is being done, what is, like what is there a list of things that are currently in the process of being done, so we can go, okay, these are almost done, we almost have sidewalks done or whatever. What's the next objective that we have for the downtown master plan, and then we can kind of pick and choose, whether it's or kind of figure out what as a group, as a council, what our next steps would be. But
isn't that what the objectives are? I mean, we have if we look on the spreadsheet, we have the goals, the new goals.
Yeah.
And then the objectives are kind of what it is to achieve, what you're going to need to do to achieve those goals.
And don't forget the CIP as well.
Correct. But it's like it may be, having a hard time just seeing like what has been done or where we are at with things following that, tracking that progression.
Okay.
On this, and that,
because I think that's 2 different things though.
So for these 5, you'd like to see eventually more specificity in the ones that we're actually
pursuing. Where are we?
Here.
We're going pretty specific thing, and if it's on here, point it just point me in the right direction and I'll figure it out quickly.
Okay, yeah, no, I think for the 5 top priorities this year, those are things that will be coming back to you throughout the year because we'll be pursuing them or are now. And we could be sure to make sure that you have regular updates on those as well.
We could even put a page together for each one of these, and cross-reference the CIP, master plans, things like that, the projects that have been completed, what we think the next steps are and things like that, where we might not get into that level of detail for every single one. The other ones might just be status updates. Like, yeah, we're working on this. We've accomplished one thing or something. This might go back in time and forward in time.
Yeah,
I think that'd be great, having like
definitely.
a list of.
I think that'd be, if I could make a suggestion, I think towards the conversation that you guys were trying to facilitate, I think it'd be helpful for us to actually just like look at this spreadsheet and like, I don't know if it's like thumbs up, thumbs down, but like kind of actually going by each one and saying like, do we agree with how that's written? Is that ongoing? Is that modified? Should that be removed? Like, I think that's what you guys are asking of us for this.
Yeah, we can go through them line by line. If you had already gone through them and you had specifics you had questions on, we can do it that way. I think I didn't want to force us to go through all 53 if you had reviewed them and you were like, well, I think most of them are right, but a couple of them I have questions about. So that part is up to you. If you think it would be helpful to go through all 53, we can, or we can go through specific goals or ones that you had questions or concerns about.
My opinion on that is that we don't need to go through all these and that we need to trust staff with this. And I think that if we, create an overriding goal and that they, or an objective that they come back with a Ford Metro and what are those 2 vehicles?
Geo Metro. I was gonna say, no one knows what a Geo
Yeah,
Metro is.
But
Too young for that.
but Jason, if each of those get us
To where
we're going,
yeah.
then I think that's on the step. Then we, as the
Right.
council, need to step back from that and say,
That's true.
okay, and that was one of my concerns with getting a little too specific with my suggestions
Mhm.
was, does that take away from like the staff's ability to, use their expertise and decide, what the best way to accomplish some of these objectives is. And I think that, it's to me, it'd be more effective for us to just look through and see if we see any sort of glaring issues or things that we, don't see fitting into any of these categories or are not, actionable or accomplishable. That would be more my.
Right. So like take for example, like kind of there's a foster a distinct and resilient economy, and it says downtown master plan. Create a plan for downtown. Didn't we kind of say like, hey, we're not going to create a plan for downtown, that we're going to try to use the 2017 master plan?
Right.
So we took that off the list, right? Because we are.
Well, we're gonna modify it, I think. We're gonna utilize that.
We're gonna need but
Yeah, we can continue to modify that to be some kind of combined plans or reflect more of what we're doing because it's not necessarily ground up kind of planning.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Or I think like because that's one that I saw is like, what is a plan for downtown? I think having some specific objectives, because I know we're talking about transportation, but we're also talking about C3 reform, like I guess like within a plan for downtown, having
Right,
objectives of what that is.
I think there is like a bit of a balancing act between kind of leaving staff the flexibility, because like we might have kind of specific ideas, but as we've experienced is kind of the situation within the community changes a lot. And so like, I'd rather not hamstring like staff into following kind of more specific objectives that might not necessarily be applicable to like new trends that we're seeing in the community or anything like that. I think one of my issues with like government in general is like, it's so rigid and slow moving. So kind of more flexibility and adaptability that we can leave within the hands of the people who are actually implementing the work on like a day-to-day basis makes a little bit more sense. It's just like, what is that balancing point? And I guess that's kind of where we come in and make that decision.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that like we're coming up with objectives, but create a plan for downtown feels like what does that mean? How do we know that we've actually accomplished that? So that is a specific one I'd like more specificity on.
Okay.
That's a good example.
Should we just go down going down the look? I mean, I think we should be looking at revised goals and objectives. That's what I think we need to be focusing on.
Okay.
I agree.
I think as you pointed out, I think in general, the way that you guys have just kind of rewritten these to be more clear is helpful. It seems like a lot of them are the same, but just reworded.
The intent, we were trying to maintain as much as we could of the original goal. And for ones that, were like a statement or something that wasn't very clear, to add a little bit more to it. But we definitely can continue to use a little refinement as we get towards a final. Okay. The first two finished goals, property tax implementation and energy efficiency audits. Any questions, concerns?
No.
Okay. Check. All right, we're moving into the modified goals. Evaluating commercial zones to support local businesses. I'll scroll over so you can see the originals. Again, I think there will be some more talks with staff on making sure we have the right wording in here to describe what we're doing. Okay, on this screen, we also have reviewing and revising the planning code that is underway. Strategic asset management, a lot of these were combined. There were some for equipment, for land maintenance, like landscaping, let's see, other city assets. So a lot of those have been combined into goals that are kind of with objectives for the specific kind of thing that we're trying to manage. So you'll see that one for line 6 and 7 on the spreadsheet. The numbers might look really random. They were pulled in from the ClearGov. So those are objective numbers, drawing them back to where they originally came from. So I'm going to use the spreadsheet numbers since they're not repeated. Okay. So maintaining assets, implement forestry grant. This is, I felt like hyper specific. So it was pulled back a little bit to go more with the sustainability plan, because we may not have a forestry grant at a particular time, but we might still have goals about urban forest. Dark skies, a lot of these were combined because it's all part of the same program.
Can you remind us what MOLO is?
Yeah.
Web outdoor lighting ordinance.
Right.
Yeah. And EV infrastructure was again kind of drawn back to its origin, which was a city council resolution for greenhouse gas reductions. Transportation is one way to reduce those emissions. Local food production came from the sustainability plan. Increasing local food production, there's a lot of different ways you could do that, and only some of them do cities have much access or ability to manipulate or control. So it was reworded to be reduce barriers. We want people to be able to pursue this if they choose to.
Going back to EV
Yeah.
infrastructure,
Mhm.
is that the city was the original goal on that was the city to implement EV cars, or for the city to implement EV charging stations?
Yeah, there were separate goals for both of those. So I think it comes later, but fleet was also a goal. So that was the city fleet for electrification. And then this one was for providing electrical charging.
So we completed the electrical charging, like what is our goal on that? Because we have a lot of new charging stations within the valley.
Mm-hmm.
At what point do we think that goal has been obtained?
Yeah. With the Rocky Mountain Power chargers, it's become a lot more accessible. And then the other thing that was on our list of things to do was to include some in the downtown area. So there were a few places stubbed out in the dispersed parking project, and eventually those will also get easier to, like, close to town, places you could plug in and go eat. So those were the two, like, kind of objectives of that goal is to have some stuff that's available in town, and then we have the Lions fast chargers.
Right, and if you recall, we did put that out for bid and we did not get any responses. Right?
That's correct. Right now, we're waiting on Rocky Mountain Power to give us some estimates of what it would cost to connect the actual, like the stepped out spots, because right now we have conduit, but we don't necessarily have the wiring. And we have some potential options for it.
So I think we're moving closer to getting that specific where, you know, we could say have so many fast chargers within the downtown, and so many of these within the downtown, or within so many blocks of Main Street or something like that. But this is the first step to get more specific like that with most of these. But that I don't think that's been defined yet. Like, how do we?
Is there a goal like? We
Yeah.
want 6 downtown,
Yeah.
you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, 'cause I think,
I guess one other thing on the revised goal, resolution 13-2017 feels more like the origin. I think it'd be helpful to kind of, because there are several under that goal, to have like a more descriptive.
Mm-hmm. We can
um,
actually put the goal there, since it was in that resolution. Yeah.
I think that'd be helpful. And then origin resolution 13-2017, we can go look that up.
Okay. Yeah, we can revise it to reflect that.
Just to clarify, is this primarily just like publicly accessible EV infrastructure? Because I know like in planning commission, we had those conversations about potentially like incentivizing or pushing new developments to include at least some sort of like portions or aspects of like EV readiness in new
Right.
builds.
Yeah. As the strategic plan is written right now, there was not a specific objective about EV readiness, but the goal adopted by City Council was to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So that's part of the reason why reducing transportation emissions is sort of an objective under this goal. And then there could be a lot of different strategies for that. So electric charging, fleet, and EV readiness in our community, all of those things would be strategies to pursue the greenhouse gas reduction goal.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, I'll keep going. We discussed local food production. Largely that was trying to reduce barriers, going down to community engagement. This is an update to a communications plan. It was written this way because it would be accomplishable. Like once you've updated that plan, then we can move it into an ongoing thing where we act on that plan. We discussed downtown already. We'll work on making that more specific, and also for
Oh, I have a comment on the communications one. Maybe that sentence isn't quite finished. Maybe it should be tools and opportunities to ...
Okay.
To, yeah,
Well, I'd say to enhance our public,
to get people more
right, engaged.
engaged, to get them in front of council, to get council in front of them, to,
Right.
yeah, so.
Okay. Yeah, keep stopping me. And we talked about downtown plan. We'll have more on that later. And developing a complete streets policy will update this revised goal. This is one of the many strategies for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. It also falls under, and I think there might be a note off to the side. There's several reasons that we might do this. It could also support a goal for community health, or pursuing a number of goals that were in the general plan and the transportation plan. So some of these fall under, there's a lot of different goals that we would be pursuing with the same strategy. Okay, parking requirements. This one still, I think, needs to be refined, but we'll keep moving unless there's discussion.
I think, well, just thinking about the category for complete streets and parking requirements, rather than distinct and resilient economy, maybe should be community health, well-being, and safety.
Yep, that makes sense.
great suggestion.
Okay. I'll just make a note and then change that later.
I think it definitely does fit in that one too, though, because
Yeah.
we know that we just had a situation where parking regulations were a big deal for somebody who was moving a business. And so yeah, I think that works on a bunch of different levels.
Yeah, agreed. All right, Mill Creek corridor planning. This was just trying to be more specific about what sorts of things we're planning for. Walnut Lane, it's looking for whatever the next steps are there. Okay, amend the subdivisions PUD ordinances to be more effectively meet their purposes. Again, I'm going to meet with staff on trying to refine some of these, especially with like community development and the planning zoning goals.
Is that, so are we looking at, what's the time frame for these goals? It's like
the
Next
three-
step.
The 53
Yeah.
goals, a lot of them don't have timeframes particularly attached to them. The ones that were identified as the top for this year are ones that we hope to accomplish on a shorter time frame. There's so many in here, and there's so many that could also be funneled into here from the other plans that a lot of them don't have a specific time frame.
As we go through, we could give kind of a time frame where we think we might be able to address these to give some idea.
Mhm.
Yeah, 'cause I think that's a huge point of this thing is like, amend the subdivision pad PUD. And then up above that, you have, another one, which was, like review the municipal code, stuff like that. It's the same department, right?
Mhm.
And does that department have time to do this,
Right.
and are we like giving these, are we saying like, hey, we want this done, and that department's like going, whoa, we haven't seen the light of day in
Yeah.
6 months,
Agreed.
Right,
Mhm.
and that's why when I brought
Yeah.
that up, I've heard about this since I've been in office.
Right.
And so is this really something that we really want to be focusing on? The same with the second one. I know for Caitlin, housing solutions are really important. But are these things that are really realistically something that we're gonna be focusing on? I don't think so, in my opinion.
Well, I think it's just timing. The pad definitely needs to be amended. Otherwise, somebody would have used it by now.
Well, I understand that. That's my point. It's
But
like,
we could
but we haven't done it.
Yeah.
And so should we even be focusing on that right now, is my point.
I don't,
In this upcoming strategic plan session.
I think to a certain degree, like that pad revision has like consistently been like something that has been discussed by council, and it shouldn't be that big of a lift. From my perspective, it seemed that was a lot more of like a capacity. It was like limited by like the planning department's capacity.
Right.
And so just because we haven't had the people to do it, it doesn't necessarily like reflect the lack of it being like a priority. I would be interested, like, I don't want to make this like a super unruly document, but it would be interesting to have a column that kind of identifies which departments would be brought in, like, so that we don't like kind of
That's a good idea.
fill one department's bucket.
well,
too
and
much.
that's, I think it'd be good to show like which department it is so you have an idea, but one thing we know for certain is we're not going to do all of these.
Yeah.
We're not going to do all these. So it helps to know what the priorities are. That's why we did the 5 or 6, the 5 top ones, right? So we know where to put our energy, but it is very helpful to say, like what the mayor's talking about is like, this one, it hasn't been done yet. Maybe some other ones need to be done before it could stay on here with the idea that, if time allows, get to this one, or when time allows, get to this one. And maybe it just rolls over for a couple of years before it gets done. But yeah, we're not going to get to all of these.
Yeah,
I know, but-
and better that than in this document to have more than we can get to than to have.
Well, I think that's your choice. That's your choice. If you want to signal that, yeah, it is important. We understand that it's going to take some time, but we don't want it to be forgotten. Your initial comments, we don't want it to be forgotten about. Wanted to keep it front and center, but also acknowledge at the same time that this might be a lower priority than some other ones.
And we're looking, it's a 2-year plan, right? Our strategic plan isn't it? The idea is that we're
That's why I
looking.
asked. It's like, I don't.
It's up to you what it is.
Well, and I think the way that it's defined is that we're looking out 2 years, and then the general plan is a much longer view. This is our, our action items to get into. And so I think this is all, I think 2 years is a good amount of time to keep a lot of this on. I don't
Well,
think.
and keeping in mind, every 2 years is an election, and new council members that come in may have different priorities than this
Sure.
group sitting around the table.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
that's a good time frame, I think.
So it would be a rolling 2 years then. It would always be 2 years.
Absolutely, yeah. Every year,
Yeah, every year it'd reset for the next 2 years, for the next 2 years.
And I think that it's ultimately, it's again, up to staff. I think we're getting in a little bit too much and sort of our micromanaging of staff by determining what they can and can't accomplish in the next 2 years, rather than just putting it out here and leaving it up to them to make the final decision on what they have the bandwidth or capacity to do.
Yeah, but I kind of look at this too, and I go like, we're talking about the pad and the PUD and stuff, ordinances, and we were like, oh, we don't have time to get to it. However, this is a critical thing that is stopping growth from happening within the city that people have voiced frustration with. And like we said, like we've never seen anyone use it. To me, it's like, maybe this needs to be bumped up, like we need to talk to that department to say, hey, listen, by not doing this, we're stopping growth. We're stopping people from possibly getting into homes or whatever it is. And it needs to be, like, hey, that department, we'd like you to look at this before you look at adjusting the municipal code, or something like that, stuff, because those are things that are pretty critical to housing.
Well,
so
we don't know that because nobody's ever, and it's the same with the AEH. I mean, we implemented the AEH 2 years ago and nobody's ever taken advantage of that either. So we don't know that this is, inhibiting economic growth.
And so maybe we need to reach out and find out if it is. Maybe we need to reach out to our constituents, or to the people and say, is this an issue? Is it not an issue? Or is it just?
Well, I think if you reach out and say, would you rather have more incentives to developing in the city? Absolutely, 100%. And that's what the pad was supposed to do, was provide incentives for people to want to do some affordable housing. The incentives apparently aren't good enough for people to use it. So anyways, I mean, we're getting kind of into that, but yeah, if that's something important, then you'd let me know. And then we can, if you want that done before something else, we could definitely, I'll direct the staff to do whatever the priorities are of the city council.
I think like one of the difficult things is like every single one of these things is on here because they are important in like one form or another. And that's kind of where I was getting at with like just seeing who are like the stakeholders in each of these things, because if like the planning department has like 20 things out of like the 53 on here, maybe that gives us like impetus as a council to like, hey, let's narrow it down to like the top 5 for us. Just so that we're not overloading like a department that like has a lot on its plate already. And like some of these are interrelated, like the PAD and PUD revisions like are kind of incorporated within like the municipal code rewrite. Like
Yeah, true. It's just a matter of fact that community development will have the most goals. It's always like that. So, because they deal with the most policy stuff related. I mean, there's housing, there's building, which is different from development, which, and then there's streets and roads and design of those things and all that kind of stuff. So, so there's going to be a lot in there. I think, what I should do is probably give you after we're done, give you I guess a real good understanding of what it looks like for our staff to do what the priorities are. What can we do? What's going to have to be put off? What we think the order of things are, and then you can kind of say, well, actually move these around, do that first, you know, that kind of stuff.
So can we kind of move on?
I
to
just
the
have,
next?
I just want to have one quick comment. I think we need to look at some of these, especially like the PAD and the PUD and the AEH. If we amend them, are they going to be more helpful? I think we
Right,
have to
we don't know
really,
that.
we have to really look at those. And maybe we just, if nobody's going to use them, what are we going to amend them to that will be useful?
Mhm.
If we can't come up with more creative or a better plan for those, how much time and energy are we going to invest in those?
Right.
That just seems like a little more, a place to start to me. I mean,
With community development
yeah. I mean,
issues.
if we can't fix it, if we can't improve it, I don't think we should scrap those, but is that really where we want to put our energy?
Yeah, I think that's a whole workshop on its own.
Right.
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
and-
so-
well, we kind of have a limited amount of time and I want to get through as much of these as we can. So, I just brought up those particular issues because we've been hearing about them and nothing's happened. And so, not that they're not important and not that we don't want them on this list, but is the reality going to be that we're going to get to those in the next 2 years? I don't know that. So,
Yeah.
I kind of want to go through as many as we can.
Yeah, based on those comments, we do have from ClearGov, some information about timelines and responsible parties. We can pull some of that back in or try to update those. Okay.
Make 2 comments based on
Yes, please.
just kind of structurally about amending subdivisions, PAD, PUD. We are establishing like a subcommittee to talk about housing policy, kind of like within this. So I mean, that could be a structure that we continue to explore with like parks and trails or sustainability or like downtown plan is like having subgroup like workshops on those. Cause yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna be hard for us to answer that question in a council meeting, but taking more time. Second thing, definitely support timelines. I think it's not for us necessarily to dictate timelines, but to know like if this is a 1 year or a 5 year, 10 year, just like
Mhm.
kind of ballpark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So.
Yeah. No, I agree with that because ultimately it is like time invested versus potential benefit that would result from completing it. And if we have at least like one part of that equation, like that makes it a little easier to come to a more concrete conclusion of like where we should really prioritize our energies and resources.
Okay. We'll bring those things back in and update them. And okay, moving down towards alternative housing. Got below that general plan update, which I think has kind of been a persistent thing hanging out that we might do at some point. So that one is pretty clear what was intended. Dispatch service improvements. I think this was a conversation as a part of a number of agreements and revenues and so forth. So it was just worded as a goal.
And that's ongoing, right?
It is, well, we
Which
can,
one?
Well, dispatch services,
It's ongoing in the sense that we are working on it.
and I'm
And
wondering on that one. I mean, I think there's more than just dispatch services that we need agreements with our partners.
yeah, we're going through all
I'm
of them.
wondering if that goal should be a little broader than just dispatch service improvements. I mean, dispatch, the reason that this came up is because of the flood. And we realized that we had an issue with dispatch. And I don't know where we're at with, if it's bad or better. But we do need that agreement. We've been trying to get one for a couple of years. But it seems to me there's a whole lot of other agreements we need to implement too. The days of handshake contracts are over. They should be anyway. So I just wonder if we want to make that a little broader than just focusing on dispatch services.
Support that.
Okay, we can work on revising that and have dispatch services as an objective of
Right.
that. Okay.
Yep.
Evaluating water consumption, this is something that eventually will move into an ongoing thing. Right now, we just need to establish a process for monitoring our utilities. We do have obviously bills and things like that, but having them in one place where we can monitor them easily is the goal here. Okay. We mentioned the electrification of city fleet earlier. It kind of rolls under as another one of those strategies for the greenhouse gas reduction goal. And then, anything unmodified before we go into ongoing? Okay, ongoing stuff, for the most part, is something that we need to continuously do. So it was a goal. If it was something, for example, like monitoring our utilities, we needed to figure out a way how to do that. After that, it's not really a goal anymore. It's something we do, and we don't have to pursue it every single year as a new thing. So that's the idea of these things with ongoing. So revenue enhancement kind of slid into this because it came through with property tax to make sure everything was being done in the, optimal way before we moved into the property tax. At this point, it's moved into an ongoing thing. We always want to make sure we're being responsible with taxpayer money. Moving below that, social services. We started a pilot for the utility program. Once we get into this, it's more of an ongoing thing that we need to offer. Likewise, with maintaining park equipment or gym equipment, things like that, it kind of falls under that goal of coming up with asset management. Lead identification and replacement is an ongoing process to meet EPA compliance that has started and will continue. Transit, again, right now it's continuing to implement this program. Eventually we will and have started looking at the long term after the grant has ended, what will happen next.
Should that be one of our objectives?
Yeah, it's 3 years, so I think we should start developing a plan for
Yeah.
funding.
Yeah, it's gonna be a big task when that starts landing on our books for payment. So it is on our books, but when we're not getting that resource anymore, so.
Okay. Yeah. Dark sky compliance, low income strategy. Right now we do have a program available. It's ongoing. This probably will last until January of 29 when the code is in full force.
Do we want to say anything in here about the city being compliant with the MOLO?
That's up in the modified.
Is it up there already?
I think so.
Yeah, and
Okay.
yes.
As long as it's in.
And the city also does have some things. I think, yeah, we have 2 more objectives, 1 and 2. Okay, targeted programming. So continuing to evaluate programming. So we're always serving local demographics. So this is continuous. We can modify this goal per previous discussion about not naming the resolution, but what's actually in the resolution for the Community Renewable Energy Act, which is now the Utah Renewable Communities Program. Okay, again, continuing to refine and offer, maintain, evaluate programming with PRT and who it's serving. And the salary surveys will move into a 5-year rolling occurrence. So just a maintenance issue. Continuously offering training opportunities, and then on line 36, social service contributions, these already exist, continuing to evaluate and determine where those are needed. Equipment, again, asset management. Translating critical building documents. So this is, again, just evaluating when we create a new document, is this something that needs to be translated and for whom? Backflow compliance is an ongoing thing. It happens, and as well as grease trap compliance. So while these are goals, they are things that will continue to occur. And
I guess
Yeah.
on those, I think that even just like broadening that to education and compliance programs for code enforcement generally.
mhm,
Yeah, and even in terms of like weed mitigation, drainage, like cleaning out your drainage ditch, or flooding, that kind of thing. And then having backflow and grease trap as like objectives, maybe.
okay. Okay, something like that. We'll come back to it. And then emergency planning, continue to work on it. Public forums, identify when those are needed, continue to offer them, and outreach tools similar, and maintaining a relationship with Utah State University in town. Okay, any questions on ongoing? All right, we're in the last category. These are the removed fractional ownership concerns. This through legislative action is not something that we would do at a local level right now. We talked about connectivity already. The low income plan for the Community Renewable Energy Agency is wrapped up into also a legal requirement for implementing that program. We have to have a low income prep. So it's not so much removed as combined with implementing the program as a whole. Noise management is, I think, an open question whether this is a current goal or not. I'm open discussion on that. We'll leave it here.
I just don't know what much more than we can do. We have our ordinance in place. We've got, the police enforcing what they can. We got lower speed. I just don't know what more we could do in terms of that.
I don't know, those sandhill cranes get pretty noisy.
So do the geese, but
The geese and the turkeys.
Okay, this one,
so I don't
Parts
know
of
what
it
you guys
complete.
think. I know it's a big issue for the community, but to me, it's just like, I'm not sure what more we could do.
I think it's a continued priority. I think even like, expanding ongoing education about code enforcement, like that noise management, like continuing education with like UTV riders, how to have that in an ongoing,
okay,
because I think it still is an important community priority. So I don't think we should scrap it, but it feels more like an ongoing, like,
Educational.
Feels like
Mhm.
education.
yeah, like thing
Okay.
that MPD does.
all right, we'll classify that one as ongoing. We have code and we have goals on enforcement and education, outreach, etc. Sustainable tourism and small business incubator. These, one of them came out of vision, one of them is out of the general plan, it looks like. I think this was just sort of out of the purview of the city. DEI assessment, again, legally, this isn't something that we can pursue as a city. Rebranding the PRT department, it is sort of being rebranded, but under the new logo for the city. So it's not a specific goal for PRT. And we had a couple of these being updated to the general plan. They are more or less all combined into update the general plan.
Can I go back up to the develop sustainable tourism strategy?
Okay.
Couldn't that be working just an objective is working with the county to create a sustainable tourism economy or something like that? We're not doing it ourselves, but we're working with, the county to do that. Would that be?
We can do that.
Yeah, like an
Yeah,
ongoing.
I mean, and you could even make it general, like participate with local economic development
Yeah.
groups to blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
And then have
yeah,
it,
exactly.
have maybe this one be an objective and maybe some other stuff. In
We're
there
not
as
trying to
well.
create it ourselves, but that we're working with the county for economic development and for sustainable tourism.
Yeah.
To make sure that like the city's interests and
Yeah, exactly.
Considered,
Yes,
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Okay. Now unmodified. All right, any other things about the goals that were identified for removal that are now in mixed status?
Do you feel clear about the trails and active transportation, how that's modified.
Yeah, we'll modify that one.
Great.
It'll come back differently. Okay.
Thanks, Alexi.
Are there any other things that you would like to see before this comes back to you as a draft? I do have notes on what we've discussed so far, so. All right, then I'll bring it back with timelines, responsible parties, and some modifications that we've discussed. And it'll be a little more complete and less of a spreadsheet next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
That's great. I
Yeah.
know. And so in terms of strategies, you guys will work with staff to develop those goals with each department. And then I guess we'll probably need to do another workshop with the revisions that you're gonna make and the kind of the final draft. And then you guys will be approving that by the end, before the budget. So in the last meeting in June or something. So we have a couple months.
Well, yeah, there's a lot to do, and we definitely want to get you the document that you're looking for. So we probably want to do a just touch base, like maybe not the next meeting, but the meeting after, and then the meeting after that. So the second meeting in May, touch base, do a workshop, and then the first meeting is in June is when the final budget's adopted, and we could do it at the same time then.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. So
We should do it simultaneously, because remember, this is driving the budget. So that's what this
Mhm.
is all about. So it'd be good to have them done roughly around the same time.
Okay, you'll be seeing this again next month.
Thank you.
Yeah,
you.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, what do we have next? Presentations. We have two presentations this evening. 4.1 is fiscal year 2024-25 quarterly budget review. This is something that we do on a quarterly basis so you can see where we're at financially. And also, we'll just lead right into the budget process for 25-26. And then the second item is capital improvement plan review, which you guys all had a chance to go over with Michael in the last couple of weeks. And so we'll start out with the budget review and the budget process and then move into CIP.
Okay, sounds good. So the quarterly budget update is really just taking a look at the last quarter. It's really the full year up to that point, and seeing how we're performing as far as our revenues and expenses, see if things are coming in the way we expect, and how we're spending as well. So it's a report card 3/4 of the way into the year. So the report that we run, rather than just cutting it off at the 3/4 mark, we just run it till the day we actually pull it. So it happens to be 83% of the year instead of 75% of the year. And it's just the most up-to-date information that we have. So I won't spend a lot of time on this. You've received it. If you have questions, I'll be happy to try and answer those. I did put some background in the staff report so that you could get some information. I think that's just, interesting. The big thing is, like I said, we're 83% through the year. We've collected 73% of revenues, and you can see the main revenues in the chart that I provided and how much we've collected of each revenue so far. For instance, property tax, 100%, over 100% has been collected. And what that means is that more people paid their property tax than what was anticipated by the county government. So not that there were more taxes available than what we thought. So the other one that's high is energy tax, is a little bit more than what we had budgeted for. We're at 197. It's not a big budget, 197,000 when the budget was 186,000. Sales and use tax is at 67%, which makes sense because we haven't recorded some big months yet. And we expect those to be pretty consistent. I showed all of you kind of how the month by month sales tax looked for the information for the months that have passed already, and comparing those to previous years. It looks pretty good. I mean, for the last several years, we haven't seen it go down or anything. That it's been It's been coming up just at a very modest rate. I don't think we could expect any more than 2% increase there without some major changes to the city and bringing in more sales tax opportunity, I guess. So that's that. As far as expenses go, we are lower on expenses than what we had anticipated, and which is typical. We try our best to not spend money that we don't have to spend. And then when we have employees positions vacant, we end up saving money there as well. It's not what we're trying to do. We're not keeping positions open, but it's just a matter of fact, the most expensive part of the budget is that line item. So when we have vacancies, we have some savings in there as well. So things are looking really good. Confident that we'll end the year well, and that we'll be able to move some revenue from this year to next year. I don't believe we will get right up to our budget with expenses. So any questions? This is great. Okay. So I got to go to Zoom for the next part here. Sorry. Okay. So here we go. Okay, so the next thing I was going to talk to you about is the process for the upcoming budget, the budget that we're working on right now that we've talked about, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about tonight with the CIP. But so far we've gone through, this is actually a larger Gantt chart, but it shows the dates of when we're trying to accomplish things. We've done most of the legwork on getting the budget prepared. We're at the point now where we're starting to present the budget to the council. Tonight's CIP presentation is not to adopt it. It's just to have a discussion. I'm doing it early to kind of get one big piece of the budget presented to you now so that we can focus on the operational budget when we get to May. So we're going to do that tonight and have that preliminary budget discussion. What we have coming up going forward is we have two public hearings coming up. One on May 13th, that will be adoption of the tentative budget, which is a requirement in the state of Utah that we adopt a tentative budget first. And then at that meeting, set a date. That's a public hearing, but also set a date for another public hearing to adopt the final budget. Since we're not doing any tax changes, the final budget is due by the end of June. So we will schedule that for June 10th, which would give you a little bit of wiggle room if there was anything that was an issue that came up between May 13th and June 10th, so that we can actually fix any issues, make any changes, anything like that, or if you need an extra meeting or something, we can do that. So that's what's coming up on the budget. We pretty much have everything entered. We think we have a balanced budget that we can present to you that addresses all of the strategies and goals that you have, continues the level of service the way we have it right now, without adding much to the budget at all beyond what CPI would say is normal. So any questions on that? Okay.
Next, CIP.
Okay. So CIP, I'm going to go through CIP with you. It's going to take a few minutes, but I'm not going to touch on everything. I've been able to talk to each one of you one-on-one about the CIP, and now this is an opportunity to talk where you guys can get together and give me direction of where you'd like to see the CIP go, whether we're on track or you'd like to see some changes. On each page, I'm gonna have a group of projects. I'm not going to touch on each one of them, but I am going to pull out some that I think are important. And if you want to talk about one, just shout it out. We'll go into detail on any one you want, if it's not one of the ones that I'm already bringing up. So this is our revenue page, and this is where the money comes from that funds the CIP. So the three that I underlined are basically the big revenue sources for the city of Moab. I'll start at the bottom. So the transfers from the general fund, that would be the property tax. So what we're expecting is at the end of the this fiscal year, we'll transfer somewhere around $3.5 million from general fund into the CIP, and that's all of the property tax. Next year, we're looking at an increase of 2%, and the year after that, 2%. The other big one is capital projects beginning balance, and that's basically the money that's moving forward from this year to next year. The $4 million that we're moving forward into next year is simply the money to finish Cane Creek. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. And then years after that, we will not have as much that moves forward because we won't have, next year, we're not going to have any massive projects. The year after that, if you look up at grants, we could potentially start a project on the Third South Bridge, the flood mitigation project, where we're looking at expanding the bridge and fixing and upgrading the channel to allow for higher flows. We're looking at grants for that, and we're going to need around $12.5 million. This year, we're looking at some expenses, but mainly this year, the expenses are we'll see below, but those are expenses that were accounted for last year when you budgeted the money for the design of the bridge. So this is revenue. This is basically where all the revenue comes from for CIP.
Can I ask a question about property tax? Because we talked about using some of property tax will be used directly for capital improvements. Also, just appreciating that all of property tax is going to capital improvements, which is what we said we wanted to do. But with that, we talked about some of that being used for bonding. How does that tie into kind of like how does that work in terms of transferring in versus using to bond against?
So that's a decision you'll have to make based on projects that we have on the books. Right now, I wouldn't suggest that we bond any projects for this next year, but based on some studies that we're doing in this next year that we'll go over in a minute, you might think that bonding for some of these bigger projects would be a good idea, especially if the grants aren't coming through for those things. And you can decide year by year how you want to approach that. There is money coming from the CIP right now that is going into bonds. We have several bonds out right now. We have water bonds, we have sewer bonds, we have a housing bond. We have a lot of different bonds out right now. So we can have a workshop at some point. I don't believe we'll be able to do it before this year. And again, I'm not proposing any bonds for this year, but we could have a workshop to look at when all of these bonds expire, what's the level that the council wants to bond to, or what's the threshold that we would have for the CIP, for the general CIP, not water and sewer or storm drain or housing. And that we could have that understanding that we would always keep that in reserve with the opportunity to bond if we needed to. So for instance, if we thought we needed a bond for $10 million and it's a 10-year 10-year bond and there's no interest on it, which is not likely, but we would need to have $1 million a year to pay that bond back. So we would need to keep that set aside. But if you set a threshold and you say, okay, this is our bond threshold, before we allocate this to real projects in the upcoming year, let's make sure we're not going to use it for bonding first. And then the first year that you use it for bonding, it just needs to be set aside every year for that amount for bonding until the bond's paid off.
I think one of the things we talked about was bonding for several projects at a time.
Yeah.
Because I think the property tax qualified us for up to $20 million, which is one of the reasons we thought that doing the property tax was a good idea, because then we could bond for a lot of these major projects that we've been deferring over the years. So anyway, something else to think about.
Yeah, and I think we're getting prepared for that. So the year after, there's potential that we could have several big projects like that where you could bond for those.
Michael, in the last slide, why are we not seeing the RAP revenue?
Because RAP tax is going to be put into its own fund.
Okay.
So that we can track it better. So it's very simple to just open the fund and see what's in there. Right now, RAP tax goes into the general fund and it's being banked in the reserve fund. But you have to go through and you have to add up what the RAP taxes has what has come in and then subtract that from the reserve fund to plus any money we've spent out of it to find out how much is there. We want to move that into its own fund so that you can just check the balance and see what's there. We think the balance, not we think the balance is around $1 million of RAP tax. So,
But we will be able to talk about that with the CIP, right? Because some of those projects will be.
absolutely, yeah. We've got a few in here that would qualify for that.
But wouldn't you transfer then from the RAP tax fund?
You
into
would.
here?
You would, if with your approval, we would transfer money from RAP tax into CIP to pay for those projects. And it's your choice how you want to do that. That's another place where there's different strategies for that fund. You could save it all up to do one big project. We could do $200,000 to $300,000 of projects every single year and just spend the money as we get it and so on. So far, we haven't spent the money as we got it. The only things that we've paid for with RAP tax is the grants and Swanee Playground. So we've collected about 1.7 million and about 7 million has gone out. I mean, 700,000 has gone out. So we're in the hole big time.
Yeah.
But no, so only 700,000 has gone out. So it leaves us with about $1 million. So
I think ultimately it's like better for transparency too.
Yeah,
Like it's a
because
lot
we-
easier to
yeah.
track down rather than having it muddled in the general fund.
okay, I just had a quick slide so you can see the last few years and what the CIP looked like in the last few years. 23, the money was available, but there was a transfer that needed to happen before the end of the year, and it just didn't happen before the end of the year. And that did come up on our audit. It was something that we took care of, but it was after the year had closed out. So we haven't always spent a lot of money. We haven't always had a lot of money. And frankly, the only reason we have a lot of money right now is it's not because of property tax. It's because of the loan
Right.
from the CIB for Cane Creek and the grants and downtown or the hotspot funding for downtown dispersed parking. That's what's made up the big dollars, $18 million that you see there is those projects and 14 before. And most of that 14 is just transferred over to the next year. So it's not 14 plus 18. That's redundant. So if that makes sense to you. Okay. So in the coming years, we're looking at the first year, somewhere around $10 million in projects. In the second year, if we're able to do the studies that we're hoping to do, around $17 million in projects. And that could be higher or lower depending on what we can get done. In 27, there's a big unknown there, and you're not technically going to be approving the 27 budget when you approve the next fiscal year. We're just giving you 2 years just as an outlook, really. So that number will most likely change. And some of these projects, like we'll go into this in just a sec. Actually, it's right here. The 300 South Bridge and culvert replacement, which it's 3 culverts pretty much. That one we're probably moving to stormwater, which is an enterprise fund. So that would 12,500,000 would be subtracted. Of course, we'd backfill other projects once we had design done and ready to bid on those things. The other project I highlighted is 100 East and Uranium. The design is done for that. We are sending that out for bid, and we have had a few public meetings. I'd like to present that to you when we can. It would have been great tonight, but I think we had a pretty full agenda on our hands. And once it's prepared and ready to go out to bid, we can bring it to City Council, get you to take a look at it. But if anybody wants to see it in advance, it is a public document. I'd be happy to show it to anybody who wants to see it. The design generally is fixing the road, fixing the parking, fixing the striping, the asphalt, and the sidewalks and the crosswalks, and adding some landscaping, and then acknowledging that this route on Uranium at the street crossing on 191 going up toward the school and out towards 3rd South is actually a trail. It's part of the trail system. So having a little bit wider sidewalks as well. So
So when is that going out to bid?
It should be going out to bid in the next couple of weeks.
So we're off our schedule, huh?
Yeah.
Just, yeah, well, what? Well, I thought we were doing pretty good, but
Well, the
But
idea is to get
my
it done
personal
before
goal.
school starts.
Yeah, so our window is,
Right.
yeah. So we'll get that going as quick as we can. We've been really trying to keep it going.
of course.
There is another stakeholders meeting on May 1st. The stakeholders meeting is basically the people who front where the improvements are happening, just to make sure that everybody is satisfied. We did have one other stakeholder meeting, and there was some changes that happened as a result of that. So,
Did that come in way under the projected?
well, we had projected it at $4.5 million with CIB. I think it was through that process. We had to give a number way back when.
Okay.
And we had put 4.5, and then it was projected out on some of our long-term projections for CIP at $4.5 million. It could come in at $4.5 million.
Yeah.
But we're thinking that the project is a $2.7 million project.
Okay.
So anyways, and we will get engineers' estimates. If there's a need to update that, we will update that.
Okay.
The other one I wanted to just call out is that Cane Creek will be finished this year. I know it's hard to imagine that.
Been 7 years?
Yeah, I think it's been right that, yeah. So about forever. And there, I was going to announce this later, but the paving is literally happening the first week of May, first week and a half of May. So last few days of April and the first week and a half of May. So. All right, so the next group is for parks expenses. The first one is the flood mitigation on between 100 West and 500 West. This is just the study, which is in progress right now. It's under parks because that is a park corridor. It's also a stormwater corridor, but it was just coded to here, so that's where it is. You see Swanee Playground in this year there, and then Pack Creek Footbridge. This is the free bridge. That's $375,000. That's what it's going to cost to move the bridge, build the abutments, and then the approaches, and get it installed. We're hoping to come in less than that. We don't think it'll be more than that. The next one is the MRAC, and this is a big one. And it's a big one because it's necessary, and it's probably not even budgeted adequately in the second year. But I'm going to skip over the solar project first and then talk about the that one right there. And oh, I was just reminded that the stakeholder meeting that's coming up is on May 1st is for 300 South Bridge. Our staff is meeting with stakeholders on 100 East though, right? Okay, cool. So we're getting back with them to let them know that we have addressed the concerns that they did have. So back to MRAC. So what I'd like to do, and what I've told everybody pretty much, is we're really good at kind of identifying the problems at the pool, not really good at coming up with solutions and then fixing those problems. So as you know, the pool's closed right now. It's not related to the structure. It's related to mechanical, which I'll go over later. But what I'd like to do on this top one is to pay someone to come in and take the evaluations we've done and put together plans that we can put out to bid to make meaningful improvements to the pool and address the issues that we have at the pool. And this is mainly the structure of the pool, not the pool itself or the mechanical equipment, but the building that surrounds it, that houses it. So looking at $85,000 in the first year to probably get someone like McKinstry or somebody like that to come in and prepare plans, put those out to bid. And then, I only put a number out there. It's 1.5. I don't know what the number is going to be, but I do know that there are a lot of things that need to be addressed. And some of those are pretty heavy structural items, nothing that's dangerous. at the moment, but things that need to be addressed and will only get more expensive as time goes on. So putting that on the CIP moving forward. I also have this other project on here, which is a solar project, and I've explained it to everybody, but just for the sake of this meeting, I'll explain it again really quick. The MREC has solar on the roof right now. This building has solar on the roof right now. And the both of those roofs were damaged in the hailstorm, and we have an insurance payout that is allowing us to replace the membrane on both of these roofs. In order to replace that membrane, we have to take off the solar panels. The solar panels are not in the greatest working order as it is right now. I think I heard from Levi they're like 20% efficiency or something like that. So they're not the greatest solar panels. They're not really doing us a lot of good as it is right now, and they need to be replaced. It would make the most sense to replace solar panels when we have to take them off and not put the old solar panels back on. So with that in mind, we were looking at the potential to do a solar panel project replacement on this building, which is $375,000 and the MRAC. After talking to council, though, I know this is one of the things that probably needs to be talked about a little bit more because there's so much other work that needs to be done at the pool. So I wanted to just put that out there, and I know most of you were thinking about this, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts on that are and what direction you have for us on that.
Were the solar panels not covered by insurance?
No, and I don't believe the solar panels were, if they were destroyed in the hailstorm, they would have. They were not. But they weren't destroyed. It was just the membrane that got holes in it. Somehow hail missed all the solar panels. I don't know. Or they melted right before they hit. I don't know.
Yeah, I'd love to potentially focus on this, but was it last night that tariffs were announced for was it 3,000 something percent for solar?
Oh,
yeah, it's like up to 3,500% now or something for,
oh,
and
wow.
it's not just China, it's like Southeast Asia.
So we might not be able to afford this in the next 30 years.
Yeah.
So is the solar panels themselves were 900,000, right?
Yeah.
The solar panels, I guess for me, I feel like that this should be set aside because we have bigger issues than the solar panels. But I guess I'd also like to see maybe something that says like, hey, we put solar on it, you know, when it was originally built, you know, the solar panels in the end, you know, where they need to be replaced now, you know, how did that translate out, you know, financially for the city? Did we save money by having these solar panels up there, or did we lose money by having them up there because they, you know, after 10 years their life cycle, or was it a wash, you know, and stuff, and see kind of, you know, where we ended up financially by putting solar panels up there.
Right.
You know, I know that it was our initiative, however, you know, to do some of these projects to reduce greenhouse gases, you know, stuff or whatever. But I think to get behind a $900,000 project, we need to see I'd like to see how it pencils out.
Sure.
You know, and what the life cycle is and all that stuff.
Well, and just some background on that, and Alexi, feel free to jump in anytime. Come on up, actually. These were originally evaluated with the McKinstry audit, and the McKinstry audit, and I'll let you explain what happened and why we didn't include them and what the payback time is.
Yeah, right. So with the audit, we did look at doing it, and the payback period on this building is a little shorter because it's a smaller array, and the payback on the MRAC is a little longer because it's actually an expansion of the array that is there, and it's also a much larger array. So they have, and construction costs, et cetera. So basically, when we looked at it at that time, we were like, let's just do these energy projects and we'll figure out the solar. But then once we had a hailstorm and we had to take the panels off anyway, all of a sudden we have this sunk cost of, we don't want to put old panels back on. So we're either in a position where we just remove them and put nothing back up there, or we put something back up there, which is where these solar projects came back into the picture. It's like, okay, do we want to continue with the solar installations that we did have, or just not do anything, because those were the two things that made the most financial sense. On this building, the payback period is less than the life of the solar panels. On both buildings it is, but it comes out, I want to say, and I have numbers in my office, it's like a little less than 20 years on this building. Life of the panels is about 20 years. And MRAC is like closer to that line.
So basically, the cost benefit, well, the payback is 20 years. It would take us 20 years to get to recoup enough savings to actually pay for the solar panels, and the life of them is
20 years.
Something like that. I mean,
Yeah.
Did we get 20 years out of the old solar panel?
13.
well,
It's
we're
a
taking them,
13-year-old building, right?
well, we're
Yeah.
taking them off prematurely.
Yeah.
We're not taking them off because they're destroyed. We're taking them off because it doesn't make sense to put old panels back up.
The original panel still at 20% efficiency? Or
well, is it
cost
just this
efficiency
building
over
that's
here?
20%, or both of them?
This building has the oldest panels.
Yeah, the MRAX series.
It is.
This is an expansion of solar panels as well at the MRAC, because there wasn't enough to make a difference there before.
Yeah.
Are the solar panels solely electrical, or is there solar panels that are also heating the pool?
They're electrical. They're and on neither building is it fully doing, like, neither building would become net zero because we had them. So it would be entirely offsetting electricity that we use, and we would still have to buy a little bit more to power the buildings. In general, you do size solar installation slightly smaller because the feeding back onto the grid financials don't work out a lot. So you want something sized a little bit smaller than what you think you're going to use, unless you're shooting for net zero.
So the other thing I'll throw in here is, regardless of how efficient they are there, I think the recommendation at the MRAC is still not to reinstall them on the roof after we take them off, because they're definitely not providing a significant enough or whatever.
There's essentially a substantial cost to taking panels off and putting them back on, and that's why we're asking the question.
Could we not do it 26, but put it in 27 when we're looking at the pool improvements? Because we could potentially go to CIB for a loan grant and include the solar panels as part of that loan grant.
And at that time,
Absolutely.
hopefully, we will have a better idea of what the future of that building
Right.
is and whether it's
Right.
salvageable, and we hope it is, right? But
Right.
Absolutely. I think that's what we're looking for, is direction like that. So
Yeah. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's so many other things that need to be done first at that building, that it doesn't make sense to me to put those back on the roof before we know if the foundation is stable, and they're not gonna fall down in the middle of the night anyway.
If we were to approve, if we did the 85,000, just come up with a study, would that'd be in the 26 budget, which would start July 1st.
Mhm. Yeah.
Do we not think that we would want to get started on it until the 27?
Well, I think we always have the opportunity, if we can get the study done, to do a budget amendment. The revenue won't be there in 26 to do it unless we did a bond.
Okay.
Or went to CIB.
Or yeah, exactly, or grants, or anything like that.
Right. And is the 65,000, the MRAC major repairs and upgrades to the facility, is that things like the roof that's falling off, the panels, the aluminum sides that are coming off, the plywood that you see on the one side,
Yeah.
like, is that to fix, is there a plan to at least, put lipstick on it?
Yes. Yes. So the 50 and the 65,000 are for that purpose. Some of that money is for machinery, equipment, to keep the pool running and cooled and all that kind of stuff. Some of that is for replacement of some of the aesthetic elements, fixing doors, if they don't get fixed, they'll get fixed before this budget year, but we had a lot of doors that didn't work this year and showers that are getting fixed this week. And, you know, things like that. So major in terms of, it's more than $5,000.
For me, I think the pool is a priority, and I would love to see anything done with the pool fast track because it is such a well-used facility by the community that anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, so we are doing the energy audit projects, and I know that some of that is for the pool. I totally agree with you. I think that this coming year, I'd love to just like all of the things that keep breaking or that we know are about to break again. I'd love to prioritize that.
Yeah, I think like anything that we can do that's not pushed off till like 27, like, yeah, that's probably the structural stuff, you know, stuff. But if next year making, you know, this other stuff, and I think we did a lot, you know, like fixing all the holes in the stuff, but just make next year the year of the pool.
Yeah.
You know,
I think this budget is indicative of that. I mean, we are looking at replacing the water feature out back in the wading pool. It needs to be replaced. It's got issues. We've got money in there to address some of the more critical things, and we have definitely been trying to fast track as much as we can, like the showers. The showers, it's been taking a while, but since we did have an opportunity this week, we're getting them fixed right now. So yeah, I hear you. I think I see some consensus here on this topic. So,
But in terms of the solar project, we'll move that into
Yeah.
27.
yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
So we'll move both to 27 or
The city, this building and that one. So I'll get to the city building in a minute, and if that's what you want me to do, that'll be really quick, so we can just do both. Okay, so the next one is, let me just make sure I didn't. Sorry. Okay, so we're going down the net. There is a $375,000 city hall line item for these solar panels, and what I'm hearing, and if there's consensus, I'll just take that off and put it on next year as well, and that'll be a question mark for next year, not actually budgeted for next year. There's a couple of other things for city hall that I must have missed the page, but there's some improvements to the elevator, some bathrooms. There was some water damage for things like that are also included. That come out to about $210,000. So, sorry.
oh yeah, no.
Didn't know I did. Alexi, did you want to say something?
Sorry, I wanted to say about City Hall, there would be a potential reason to do it this year because there is a tax credit that could expire with tax code at the end of the calendar year. So that could be a potential reason to pursue solar on this building and not the other one, because we don't know if that would be available anymore and it would make it cheaper.
Is it a percentage of the total project?
Yeah, it's about 30%.
Okay, yeah. So we were looking about $300,000 before, and after we paid for the filing of the taxes, it'd be about 270,000. So it'd be about 100,000 with this one, a little over 100,000 for this one.
Wow.
Yeah, I guess that was my question from when we talked. It's like if we needed to do all of it to get the rebate, because it seems like City Hall roof damage, like that project's a little more cut and dry. The MRAC is just there's so many things.
Yeah, so if we did this one, we would still apply for the rebates, and the total cost to the city would be something like $250,000. Maybe take away from that $30,000 for filing taxes, because that's cost stays the same. So $220,000 maybe.
But are we
I mean, sorry, add to that 250, so 280,000.
Are we guaranteed to get the tax credits?
I don't know, Lexi, are we guaranteed to get the tax credit?
I don't think we know.
Uncertainty, tax code is, we can't guarantee anything. The general consensus is the tax code is unlikely to change in this fiscal year for this fiscal year, but in the future that it would become more uncertain. However, can't say for certain.
Is it a federal tax credit?
It is a federal
No,
tax
it would
credit.
expire September 30th. Cause that's their budget. Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's on that schedule. Like, I think it is on the filing schedule. So I think we're allowed to either do it on ours or on a calendar year. So we have those two options. My understanding from working with McKinstry is that if we do it file by the end of the calendar year, that we would still be able to ask for it or, request that.
I would like to pursue that for this.
You
building.
okay with that?
I think for City Hall, yeah.
Thanks, Lexi.
Yep. Thanks.
So the only other transfers, these are actual transfers, $450,000 for fleet. I went over fleet with everybody. Fleet's an ongoing expense. It has been paid for out of the CIP. When the CIP couldn't afford it, the general fund paid for it. But it is an ongoing expense that would continue going. We are leasing a lot of vehicles as a policy now. We're able to lease and actually have more vehicles than what we need on hand without paying as much. And that 450,000, the total budget for the vehicle fund is a little bit more than that, but water and sewer are also paying into that if they have vehicles in there. And we also will start to build that fund with money that comes in from surplusing vehicles as well. So it could go down in the future. The $250,000 is a transfer to the general fund to support engineering's efforts in all these capital projects, because we have a lot of overhead expenses for putting together these capital projects. By no means is this 100% of the engineering division. We have five employees in there, and this is just paying a portion of each one of their salaries. And majority of the work is done by the engineers actually doing the designs and doing project management and stuff like that. So that gets us to the bottom line, which we discussed previously. So I'll just move forward. I'm going to go over water, sewer, and stormwater really quickly. Not a lot to talk about here. These are enterprise funds. They pay for their projects through their own resources. A lot of the work here is ongoing major maintenance that needs to be done, like painting tanks, replacing pressure reducing valves. One of these projects is really big, and that's the Arches National Park water extension. We would not pay for that. That would be from the United States of America. National Park Service would be paying for that. The $250,000 in the first year is for design, and the 12+ million in the next is for construction.
Is that just for water or?
That's just water. I have one on sewer as well. So Joette, our mayor, knows that it's a bigger project than $12 million. So I'll show you the other part of that in a minute. But the water tank, Spanish Valley water tank, we are looking to get that one going this year. We're looking to go to CIB for a portion of that in June. And we also have a grant that came to us from the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. And there will be some general fund contribution to that as well, depending on what we get from CIB. So going down to, I guess I put lines on this one too. So going down to sewer, we have the Arches project there. So that's the reciprocal part of that. So Arches project we're evaluating it now, would be sewer and water to the entrance of Arches. I think we've talked about this before, and you approved a letter for that as well. That encouraged us to go forward with this. The outfall project is the other really big one that's on here, and it's 2 down from where the Arches project is. The outfall project is something that could have been paid for through the TNC grant, The TNC grant, as far as we know, isn't coming. I mean, we haven't heard anything about that since the initial Office of Management and Budget, or whatever it's called, froze all of the grant proceeds. We don't have a contract for it. We were barely awarded the grant for, I think it was $26 million. We were barely awarded the grant, and then right afterwards, the executive orders came out. So we are looking at CIB on that one as well, either grants or loans on that, and then it'll be a big portion of that will be coming from the Sewer Enterprise Fund, what's left of the bond for that. Next, the last one actually is Stormwater Enterprise Fund, and the big one on here is the NRCS projects. These are currently being reviewed by NRCS and will be going forward soon. And will be coming to the City Council for bid award, but they're not quite ready yet. We've done all the work on our end, all the engineering, all talking to private property owners and everything. NRCS just wanted some more time to review the plans before they approve it and disperse the money. So that is our CIP. Any questions on that you'd like to go over? And I apologize for missing that one page, but one of the other things that was on there was a set aside for property acquisition for active transportation connections. And I just think that, and another thing that was on there was money for a reserve amount for responding to flood and other natural disasters for cleanup and things like that. Now, we also have a lot in here that is addressing moving forward with infrastructure for floods and improving infrastructure and trying to make things better. But we're definitely going to continue to be in a response situation with a lot of things, and we do need to have money standing by to be able to put out contracts and things like that on short order. So the amount for that was $250,000. The amount for the acquisition for land for trail connections was $385,000. That month, though, both of those accounts would just carry forward if you don't spend them, so you don't have to budget them year after year if nothing's happening with them. We have spent over $500,000 responding to this last year's disasters. If we do have big issues like we had last year, which we know we're not, we hope, we're trying to be optimistic, we may have to amend that amount. So
are we trying to put money into that each year so that we're kind of banking for when it does happen?
I think the money should go, rather than banking, I think the money should go to pay for projects, and we should just carry the emergency response money every year. And as soon as we have a project, we fund it and get it built. As soon as we have plans, we get it built. And that money, instead of banking it, it could be used for bonding. It could be used for actually doing smaller projects and so on. So,
well, I was kind of wondering too, as we, I think with the property tracks and the infrastructure, on the infrastructure, we've kind of got to always kind of have a road project going on. It kind of seems like, to be constantly going hey, we're going to do Uranium Avenue, and then we're going to do, and kind of looking and going what's after Uranium Avenue? Is it the 300 West Bridge, or is it another street? And if it's, and kind of coming up with a list of streets that we want to repave, or redo in town, with these, as part of our infrastructure, redoing it and stuff. Been doing those. Do we foresee needing some of these CIB funds to go up as, hey, we're going to do this road on 4 South, and in doing that, we're going to end up doing water and sewer on those roads. And is that going to will be, so what I'm saying is these budgets could change, if we decide to do a certain road, and then, the public works goes, yeah, if we're gonna do that road, let's redo the water and sewer on that road at the same time.
Yeah, most of these will change, and I guess I'm so used to going over every single one of these in detail, and since I just touched on a few, I thought I missed them, but they're actually on here, and I want to show you a couple really quick.
Didn't you talk about doing a pavement plan of some sort?
Yeah,
so
we
that they
do.
would
We
do
do
that?
have a pavement plan, and why can't I get? I think I got out of Zoom. Anyway, some of the projects we're looking at for street projects in the next 2 years, and these come from the pavement plan. There is a list of projects that are kind of waiting in a parking lot, if you will, waiting to get funded to move up. And we've moved several of these up. The ones that we've moved up are 100 North street improvements and the 400 East road improvements. Those are two projects that we'd like to do in the following fiscal year. We also are looking at putting money towards in this fiscal year, the one that we're in today, the sidewalk project, which is going out to bid soon as well. And next year, a sidewalk project that we could potentially do in the next fiscal year. The fiscal year after that, the sidewalk project will be those two other roads that we're looking at. One other road that we would like to design in this coming year is 100 West, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done on 100 West that is below the street. There's some curb and gutter that needs to be done. There's stormwater. There is some paving that needs to be done on the north end of 100 West between 2nd North and 400 North. Obviously, again, storm drain, crosswalks, connections, ADA ramps, those types of things. We'll be looking at all of those and doing a design for that street in this coming fiscal year, and then hopefully funding that development or the improvement of that street in the year after. So I think we've got a healthy amount of road projects, sidewalk project, active transportation projects, and other general projects that are definitely adding some quality to the infrastructure within the community, which then adds quality to people's ability to travel and choose different modes of transportation and be safer, I guess, as they're doing it. So, and then the flood damage repair was on here. I just didn't mention it. And it's actually $350,000 a year, not $250,000. And when I was talking about banking, I was saying, let's not build it. If we don't spend it one year, let's just keep it 350 for the next year instead of putting 350 each year until it gets really big, and actually spend that instead of adding money to it each year. If we don't use it, spend that money on making exactly. Yeah. So are there any other questions or direction that you have for me on the CIP? I know there's a lot here, and when I went over with you, I was able to do every single one, but I didn't touch on every one. If you want any more detail on any of these, just let me know.
Well, Michael, I'd like to see something done with the RAP funds. I think it's time we're getting close to the halfway point of our 10-year period of collecting these RAP revenues. And, we just heard from a community member for a citizen to be heard about some needs at the ball fields. What I would suggest being done with it is that we pay for a design for the ball fields. And then we decide based on the design if we want to pick it apart incrementally, or if we want to use that $1 million that we have banked right now and bond against that, knowing that we're going to be bringing in another $400,000 for the next 6 years.
Yeah.
But I'd love to see some kind of demonstration of that RAP funds. I mean, I know we just did the playground, but I think the community wants to see that too.
Okay. And there already has been some groundwork done on that, so we could actually pick up where the last work was done and just start from there. And if that's what the council would like to see, I can add that to the CIP funded by RAP tax. The other RAP tax thing that could be funded in this CIP is the water feature replacement in the swimming pool, at the outdoor swimming pool at the MRAC, sorry. So if there's agreement, I will add that to the list for evaluation this year, and then
Isn't that in the parks plan? the ball fields? Isn't that part of
It
that?
is, yeah.
It's on CIB too, actually, the long-term CIB. So it's been definitely considered a lot. If you'd like to move forward, we'll put it on here.
I would. I think it's a great idea. And I think that it's due and the community's waiting for it.
Noted. I will add it to the list.
Thank you.
And then I think just about Jason's comment and kind of similarly how we're doing for stormwater. I know for Tusher Street, like as we're continuing to update like our roadway improvements, I think having some kind of contingency, I mean, basically that's kind of what having some kind of contingency for inevitably hitting old lines that we didn't know were there. I feel like that's gonna continue as we continue to finally redo some of these old roads.
Yeah.
I don't know what that looks like in this list.
And you're talking about water and sewer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, definitely. And Obi and I talked this morning, and every time we look at a road, we're looking at water and sewer as well, and storm drain. And we also need to have some discussions about the future of water and sewer, because we have bonds on those, but we've done a lot of projects, and we need to do a checkup on where those funds are and how much money's left and how much work there's left to do. So
One thing that, it's not on here, and I'm not surprised, but when we all got elected, the three of us, one of the first things that was talked about was the Public Works building and how bad it needs to be replaced. And so that's a big lift, but I don't know where we are with that, because I know it's something that we've been told and gone and seen. There was the fire there, and and it just seems like it feels like it just is not even on the radar anymore. But it was a big priority 3 years ago.
it's on the radar. We do have an RFP ready to go out to do a facilities plan, and that would be one of the focus points. We can fund that in this coming year. It'd be in operations, and it would give us guidance on how to move forward with that. So we are planning to move forward with that this year, but it's not the replacement. It's only the evaluation. And the pool would have been considered in that as well, but we pulled that out because we want to fast track that one. And this analysis of the yard is going to be a lot of different buildings, right, Levi?
Yes.
So
Great.
if you're still interested in that, I think we're on the right track, and we'll be able to report on that this year to you.
I think we are. Don't you think so? I mean,
Yeah.
it's a need that needs to be taken care of.
Okay.
Anything else? Whew. I think that's the most we all talked the whole time we've been here.
Michael,
Great.
great work. Yeah.
Yeah, you bet.
All right, so basically, where are we gonna go with this next?
Okay, so I presented this tonight and got your direction tonight, so that we can kind of do just an abbreviated presentation when we approve the budget, when you approve the budget, the tentative budget. We can make changes though, just so you know. This is not, I'm not asking you to approve anything tonight, but I do think I've got some good direction. And then I will publish that when we publish the budget, when you review that before the tentative. And if you have more changes, we can actually talk about them on May 13th.
Sounds good.
Mm.
All right, thanks, Michael. Next on the agenda is department updates. We have no department updates, although Michael is going to give some updates during the city manager report about certain things in other departments. We have the consent agenda, item 6.1, 6.2, approval of the minutes from the regular city council meeting on April 8th, 2025, and approval of the bills against the city of Moab in the amount of $1,254,513,000.38. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Jason, second.
Can second that.
Second by Colin. Discussion, Jason?
No.
Colin?
No.
Anybody else? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Next is our general business. We have one item, 7.1, consideration of adoption of resolution 05-2025, a resolution approving the Lionsback Resort Phase 2 final MPD and phasing plan major change amendment for the property located at 1353 Sandflats Road, Moab, Utah, 84532. And this is just, they're moving on to their next phase, and that's what we're considering tonight. Corey, go.
Very good.
Who is this? young
Thank you.
lady?
Yes, council, we have a staff person to introduce. This is Johanna Blanco, our associate planner. So
Right.
is taking on a significant amount of our development review planning process. So it's only fitting that this is her inauguration into presenting to council, specifically on this project that she's participated in aspects of the review following, but also agenda prep and everything else. Certainly myself available to help facilitate some of the background that we'll probably go through tonight. But yes, Johanna will walk us through the beginning of this application process, and then I think I'll jump in with a little bit of background and specificity into the specific procedural elements that we'll walk through. So we'll try to keep it brief. You've had quite a big meeting, but I think it's important, especially with Planning Commission's review of this, to identify exactly where we're in the process, exactly what the administrative elements are, and go from there. So I'll turn it over to Johanna.
Nice to meet all of you that I haven't met before. Nice to see those of you which I know. Happy to be here. Today we're talking about phase 2 final MPD and phasing amendment for Lions Back Resort up in the sensitive area resort zone on Sand Flats Road with the applicant of John Dwight. Here you can see the preliminary MPD that was approved in 2008. And over to the side there, you can see the unit count and type of what was approved. In the beginning, when Sitla and LB Moab Land got together, there wasn't a zone in the city that would allow their specific project. So the city created the sensitive area resort zone, and along with it, the master plan development process as they annexed that project into the city. Again, in 2008, the preliminary MPD was approved. Then in 2021, Planning Commission approved the final MPD of phase 1. Then most recently on April 10th, Planning Commission forwarded a positive conditional recommendation onto you all for phase 2 final MPD and the phasing plan major change amendment. The conditions to that conditional approval are the resolution of all outstanding DRT comments, which is Exhibit 8 in your packet. We thought it wise to go through the process since it's been a while. The MPD process is specific to the SAR zone. In this process, a preliminary MPD is required for the whole of the project. Then as development begins and details are ironed out, final MPDs are approved for each phase. The preliminary MPD approval process is extensive and it evaluates all those listed items. Then when we get to final MPDs, they should not differ significantly from the preliminary approval. Significant meaning amount of open space, number of units. And then DRT reviews all the listed items for compliance on the final MPDs. Here is the approval matrix. On step 4, you can see what was done in 2008. Step 5 was done in 2001, and again tonight.
Alrighty, I might pick up a little bit with some background, and we can certainly dig more into that. I've prepared the holistic date summary. We don't have to go into that unless you'd like to. I know the Planning Commission was somewhat curious, and where does this all fit within the larger scope of what has been a multi-decade situation for this approval process? But essentially what we're looking at is the administrative land use authority approval that is the city council for the development piece and plating of this final phase two. The additional element tonight that is also contained in this resolution is a phasing plan major amendment. You are also the land use authority for those amendments. In that, not that the phasing is dramatically changing or significantly affecting, but just phasing plan amendments, period, are captured as a major amendment. So I don't want to forecast that somehow we're really manipulating phasing dramatically. We've profiled in the next couple of slides what the preliminary phasing was, and then what was reestablished with phase one phasing, and what we're now looking at for phase two as an overall phasing plan. Altogether, with the reorganization of those phases, all that's really happened, other than shifting around when those will be planned to occur, is an increase of 3 units in phase four and a decrease of 3 units in what we're talking about for phase two. Not that there's units being added or subtracted, just that it balanced out, that all the reorganization of phasing actually equaled out to the same number of units per phase, except for this little exchange that we would see here. So we'll go ahead and go to the next slide. Just profiling again our major chain language. It's been discussed with the applicants and their representation from the legal side as well as ours, that the Venn diagram of what could be included as a minor change and major change is just that. There's a lot of overlapping language. So where it makes the most sense is, as we're already going through this phase two approval where it's here in front of you anyway, it makes a lot of sense for this to be formalized as a major change, albeit minor by nature of what that means, but to the technical code, just to remove any concerns of where and which we're placing this change. That's why we're seeing it tonight. We should be seeing the phasing, or excuse me, here is the plating approval that we'd be looking at tonight. In addition to the phasing being reorganized, we did see a relocation of amenity, recreation, and open space, in that there is a tract of land being platted with phase two that was within the area of what would be a future hotel phase, that they can actually now execute a pool within that area. This is, again, a liberty that they have within the flexibility of the preliminary MPD to move some of these approved amenity elements throughout the phasing as it sees fit. That's what they're exercising with that particular tract. The platting that we see here is phase two, but as we go now to these next slides, what is, and had Johanna showed earlier, the original phasing plan. This is the phasing plan, although with the coloration, it's quite difficult to tell where those phases are labeled, but more or less, phase two is far off to the north, the right hand of your screen. Phase one was just the hotel phase, and then it stacked up through the rest of the residential phases. It's a little bit more clear in this next slide, which was approved as a part of the phase one approval, where they did reorganize some of the phasing and relabel it. So this is what we had been moving forward with. As the applicants came in for phase two, this is now what they're supposing. So you can see just above the proposed hotel phase is phase two. Where we go to this next slide, the applicants are bumping their phase two beyond that. There's a strategy that in the future, if they do engage in the hotel phase, they'd like that separation from the hotel to allow for some development space of those existing units. I won't speak for the full strategy. The applicants are here if they want, or if the council has any more questions for them. Let's go ahead and move forward. This was a narrative supported by the applicants, is included in your packet. We won't go into the details of this. Tonight, the additional clarification I'd like to make is in the agenda summary. The recommended motion did not have the conditional recommendation in there. The resolution did. So this was an omission that I had made by, I forgot to attach it. So this was the motion as recommended by Planning Commission and as by staff. It was just an error that it got omitted in your agenda summary, but was shown in the resolution that that's what we're recommending. To the effect of, they've gone through DRT, have satisfied all the feasibility design requirements, but there are a number of finer detail elements of construction plan sets. To the minutia of degreed angles of utility infrastructure. We are not trying to hold up their approval process for those types of construction documents, but we'll obviously have those sorted out before we issue any building permits. So that's what we're recommending for your review tonight. Again, I could go through the history, given there was such a long gap of both entitling documents and then also where we land. But I think we're comfortable with the fact that the prevailing document is essentially the original preliminary approval as well as their development agreement. I think that sets the stage enough that we're not looking to make any discretionary amendments to those documents at this time with this approval. So I'll go
You
ahead.
guys good with that? You guys,
Yeah, leave
without going
the
through
presentation right there. And we can be available for any additional questions.
Luke, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think Corey summarized what a lot of the discussion focused on during the planning commission meeting. And if I understand correctly, this is like an administrative decision on our part, correct?
Yes, it's two administrative exercises. One is development plan. So we have architectural designs as well as platting. So what we kind of think about is it's a combination of a subdivision approval and a site plan approval meshed to one, which is the MPD. That's what we're doing tonight. So the land use entitlements have already been sorted. We're just making sure it complies with code at this point.
And since it is an administrative decision, it's basically like if they checked all the check boxes, then
Right.
Correct.
And all the check boxes have been checked.
Correct,
Yeah.
albeit those that are still outstanding with DRT,
Yeah.
but their profiles, we feel comfortable that we're secure in this approval until they can finalize those details.
Questions?
Not really.
Motion?
I'll make a motion. Do you want me to read that whole thing that's on the?
I think if you were to read the main body of the motion and then reference all outstanding comments, we have it sufficiently addressed. I'll look at summary, say, is that okay? Yeah.
I move that Moab City Council conditionally approve City Resolution 05-2025, a resolution approving the Lions Back Resort Phase 2 final MPD and phasing plan major change amendment for property located at 1353 Sand Flats Road, Moab, Utah, 84532 with the following conditions. Referencing all outstanding comments shall be addressed to the satisfaction of the engineer and planning coordinator prior to building permit application approval. And I want it noted, the first time I voted on Lions Back, I had brown hair.
Council, Tony may want to amend the motion to say that it's also subject to review and approval as to form by the city attorney.
This is, I think Lisa.
Yeah, this is our attorney. This is our city attorney.
There was a comment from Nathan earlier that the plat itself is under review with the attorney for form of the plat. So
Which is actually, Lisa, is a typical process. Do you think it needs to be added to the motion?
It depends. You may want to just, I think Nathan wanted it to be at least discussed that he was going to review it as to form and it was subject to his approval.
Yeah, I think that's kind of just the normal part of the process. I don't think it needs to be included in the motion because he's gonna do that anyway. Correct?
Yeah, I'll promise we'll do that.
Yeah.
Okay, very
Yeah.
good.
All right, so we have a motion by Tawny, second by Luke. Further discussion, Tawny?
No.
Luke?
Nope.
Anybody else? All right, I'll call for the question. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
I'm gonna abstain.
Okay, motion passes 4-0 with one abstention, with Caitlin abstaining.
thank you so much, Council. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on, we go back to Michael. Michael,
I'm
we've learned
sorry.
a lot from you today, so
Hey, I put a lot of work into this, so. Anyways. Got a lot more coming too, so. Everyone's leaving. This is my update.
Right.
Right,
briefly.
Okay, so. Just a couple of things for you really quick. The swimming pool, as I mentioned earlier, is closed at this moment. There was a catastrophic failure of some of the distribution pipes at the pool. Those distribution pipes are up, exposed right below the ceiling, and made a big mess in there. But also, they were pipes that made it so our machines ran and stayed cooled and everything, so they couldn't run anymore. So it was a big mess. Plus, we couldn't run the pool, so the pool had to be closed. It should be it will be opening soon. We have had people working on it nonstop since it happened. We are trying to address some other issues right now while it's closed as well, which are the showers. Can't promise anything, but our hope is to get it open the next few days. So, and it is definitely a priority to get that back open. Swanee Playground will be opening soon. You might notice that it's a soft opening because it's not 100% finished. There's still some concrete work that needs to be done on the outside of the playground, but the whole playground will be finished, and they will be taking down the fence. And if there's no fence, you can use the playground. But we'll do a grand opening. That'll be TBD, and announcements to come on that.
It looks really good.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, isn't it? Yeah.
I saw somewhere where the school bus, the kids on the bus were so excited, they made the school bus driver drive around the park.
That's awesome.
See it twice.
It's a pretty nice school bus driver.
We have the grand opening in mid-May. That's gonna be a fun thing for us to see.
Okay. UDOT striping is going to start this week. They will be striping on 191. I've told them to stay away from town this weekend. They're not allowed in town. Jared Beard told me that he would pass that along. We've got people on the lookout to make sure that they're not trying to come in and stripe through town during the car show. Some of the good things that will happen with this will be some of the pavement markings that we're expecting, including some of the high profile or the high vis crosswalks at the Hawks, at both of the Hawks. So that'll be taking them a bit of time. It is a contract project. It's not UDOT that's doing it, I don't believe. So Cane Creek will be asphalted. I already mentioned this. Pretty soon here, we will have a real road out there by the middle of May, which is exciting. We have a new employee who started in the police department, Jason Albrecht. He is a 14-year veteran of, I believe, the sheriff's office or UPD, and comes to us from up there and is a lateral hire, and we're glad to have him. And that's it, actually. I'm gonna leave the last one. So be a mystery.
The mystery report from the CF.
Killing us.
I know.
It's nothing. It was chicken scratch. I thought it was a thing. It's not actually a thing. So.
All right, thanks, Michael. All right, council reports. We'll start with you, Tawny.
Okay, I attended a Canyonland Healthcare Special Service District meeting. It was basically a business meeting. And we did have an executive session. I attended my budget meeting with Michael and Danny and Caitlin. I talked with the mayor and Jason, and I met with the museum president of the board of the trustees, just to discuss strategy and moving forward with the museum. And that was it.
Thank you. Call it, so I don't forget.
Get one this time.
Just a little bit.
I'll be quick. Had that as an all-day solid waste retreat where we visited all of the sites, which was very informative. Thing that really stood out with me out at Klondike, north of town, is that even with our plastic bag ban, plastic bags are such an issue out there, and there's just no way to control them. Because this is new to me, but I didn't realize that our is it an ordinance? Our bag ban allows for thicker ply plastic bags to be used, and those things, as soon as they're moved around the landfill, they immediately, with the slightest breeze, go up to 200 feet and are headed for 191. And so I think that is something that we should think about as we move forward, and maybe work to amend that bag ban. I snuck away at the 12 to 1 hour to come have a lunch with the staff, which was really nice. And then on the 12th, Saturday the 12th, we had the spring spruce up. We had 98 volunteers, 13 projects. I think it's safe to say that two of the finest volunteers are sitting at this table, Jason Taylor and Colin Topper.
Wow.
That's,
I mean, I think that's safe to say.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, all right.
Yeah.
Why I don't
Yeah,
This is why you don't give me a report.
Yeah, after it was over, I didn't leave my house for 3 days because
You're right, good.
couldn't move.
In the city, there were several great projects, including painting of the bus stops, which was absolutely amazing. If you haven't seen them downtown, they are so cool.
Oh, yeah, they are. They're great.
They stand out. Probably my favorite project. We did a huge flood debris cleanup, and then there was a lot of weeding and re-veg that was happening within the city limits. So great event. Had a budget meeting on the 21st. On the 22nd, which I guess is today, I met with the chief and assistant chief to talk about all these new electric vehicles that are all over town and in the parks and on the parkway, and trying to come up with some kind of plan moving forward. And then had an steering committee meeting, which real quickly, they just hit the 15.5 million ton mark. And so a lot of you know that there's estimated to be 16 million tons in the pile. So we're getting very, very close of having all the material moved. There will be about 1 million tons extra for the sub pile and off pile, but we are getting very, very close. And then I just learned that the phase 2 of the U92 exhibit is opening or is happening sometime around July. So that's exciting. That's it for me.
Thank you. Luke.
I attended the local homeless council. Just some quick updates. The Moab Free Health Clinic will be launching its HIV PrEP clinic on May 2nd for under and uninsured individuals. And they're still trying to advertise their Produce RX program, which is digital vouchers for healthy food. I think they had started going, and it isn't being taken advantage of as much as they would like it to. So just kind of putting it out there. Brianna gave an update that the King Creek Affordable Housing will include set-aside units for DV survivors, disabled individuals, and homeless persons. And then we're having some discussions about kind of talking with the state. Although we're very appreciative of a lot of the grant funding that has come into our area, there seems to be kind of like a ramping of reporting requirements, which a lot of the organizations were finding to be pretty onerous. Then I also attended the Planning Commission meeting where we had discussed the Lions Back kind of phase 2 approval, and then future agenda items for them are going to include kind of EV readiness for homes, and I think it was like water management and water shortage plans. Then I attended GWISA, where Mark Stilson came down and kind of gave us an update about the negotiations that are ongoing between all of the like river basin states. They're making progress. It is an unbelievably complicated process, but hopefully something will be coming soon, because I think they're running out of time before, like, statutorily, I think the federal government will step in. And then attended the budget meeting with Jason and Michael, and then I also attended the employee lunch at the council chambers that Colin had referred to, and that's it.
Thanks, Luke. Caitlin.
Too busy taking notes on what all of you are doing. Okay, from our last council meeting, I also attended staff lunch. Always a treat to see everyone. And then from there went through the Housing Task Force County Housing Subcommittee. We've been working on HDHO updates. I think it's a really good example of how the city subcommittee will work on, for example, pad updates, that kind of thing. So really excited about that. We are scheduling that first subcommittee meeting at long last, which I'm really excited about. on the 19th this past weekend, I attended the Sleepless Sheepless Bike Safari, attended as an individual, but just wanted to give the organizers a shout out. One of the tasks that people could do was to email an elected official about bike infrastructure. And so I know that the city council received one email. I received a few. I can imagine that you probably received several. Just one. Okay.
I received two.
Too.
And the
Nice.
second one,
You
the
did.
second one, they wrote down what it was, and then at the end where you're supposed to say their name, they had in parentheses, your contact information, and their name. And it's like, they forgot to put that in there. They just
Yeah.
copied and pasted it. So anyway.
Yeah, it's probably a chat GPT written comment, but yeah, I think even within that it was really nice to see people engaging with elected officials and just the way that they organize this event to support various like community organizations and just connect people to community, connect non-Jeepers with Jeepers and kind of funny, ridiculous ways. Really cool event. I attended the budget meeting, and then this morning, last minute, actually at 10:30 p.m. last night, was invited to the working group meeting for the Utah Housing Strategic Plan Phase 2, which we provided comments on Phase 1. So Phase 2 is focused on tactics. So I'm in a working group for rural and resort housing. So they are looking for other people from rural and resort communities, basically not just people from the governor's office to attend those. So if any of you have recommendations from other resort communities, let me know. And that's it. There's lots of other stuff, but that's it for now.
Thank you.
Me?
No. Just kidding.
So I attended attended a meeting with the mayor and Tani, and also attended a budget meeting with Luke. As far as my other board meetings, I didn't have too many this last 2-week period. They seemed to all fall at the beginning of the months. I attended the Spruce Up, where the two worst volunteers are in this room. Up here, not back there. But I attended the Spruce Up, and it was awesome. It was a great event. It was really cool to see how many people showed up. There was people from all walks of life, all abilities, and it was incredible. And I wasn't kidding when I said I barely moved for 2 days afterwards. Like carrying huge trees and people on their hand. It was amazing to watch people on their hands and knees. Just digging out trees that and shrubs that had been wrapped around trees from the flood. So it was a great event, and all the people that helped out with it really need to be commended. This week we had Jeep Safari Week, which we all know. I'd like to give a shout out.
Yeah.
What's that? Yeah. We need to give a shout out to everybody in this community, from the Red Rock Four-Wheelers who put on their the 59th annual event. Been coming here for nearly 60 years. Just what a huge economic impact this event is. And I think that this year everybody did a great job. But I think from the businesses accommodating all the extra people in town, to the police department, and the sheriff's office, to making sure everybody was safe in town and out on the trails. I think, enough can't be said about what it means economically for businesses, Jeep Safari Week, and then going into Car Show Week. This really kind of kicks off, town, and it's amazing. So I just wanted to kind of do a shout out to everybody who had to deal with the extra people, and all the people who came here and were such awesome visitors. I think that I didn't hear a lot of issues. We really need to appreciate all the people that came. That's all I have.
Thank you. I missed Jeep Safari weekend. Unfortunately for me, I had something else I had to do, but Sounds like it was a good event. There's a lot of people in town. Great to see that. Next weekend, we've got another big event, so it's always our kickoff weekend. Our week with Jeep Safari, so more to come, I think, in the next few weeks. I attended the Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District meeting with Tawny. One of the things that we discussed in that, we had a public hearing. The district is going after a planning grant with CIB to hire a consultant to complete the MAPS campus with senior housing. So hopefully we're going to go to CIB in June. I also was at the Moab Tailings Steering Committee meeting today with the DOE. It sounds like everything's moving forward, even with all the uncertainty with federal agencies that are happening right now. It doesn't seem to have impacted this particular project. We also, I feel really confident that the funding levels are going to remain the same for the duration of the project at the levels that they need to get it completed. It sounds like they're really trying to expedite things also to get that project completed. As you guys all probably saw in the paper, Senator Curtis and Senator Lee have introduced legislation for that, once that project is completed, for it to be transferred to the county, which is really good. You know, hopefully that'll make it through Congress, but it's great that our senators, and I know that Congressman Kennedy is also very supportive of that land transfer. So hopefully we'll be hearing more about that in the coming months and years. And this Thursday, I'll be meeting with our lobbyist, Tim Stewart, to talk about the flood mitigation funding. That's something that we've submitted a grant to Senator Curtis's office.
That's right.
So we'll be talking about that and seeing kind of what we feel the real, if we're actually going to be able to get that funding. But we did submitted the grant. Tim Stewart is going to help put that forward for us. We'll also be talking about other issues that are impacting our community at the federal level. And tomorrow they're having the culture exhibit opening at Raptor State Park. And there'll be presentations and tours and dinner. So if anybody's interested in that, we need to RSVP, but it starts at 1 o'clock and it goes till 8:30. And that's all I have. And we don't need a closed session, so I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Tawny,
Second.
second by Colin, all in favor. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Oh my God, are you so bad? That's the longest meeting we've had in a long time.